Hello, I'm Alistair McIntyre, and I wanted to make this video about commercial television in North America. Essentially, my background is that I mostly lived in the UK. And in the UK, we have a thing called a license fee, which means if you have a television, you have to pay an annual license fee. And that fee is maybe, I think at the moment it's around about £135, which might be about $200 a year. And it's mandatory, you must pay it. Because the license fee actually funds the BBC, which is a public broadcast company. Now that means that anything you watch on BBC is advert free. Now in the UK we also have ITV, STV and Sky as well, which are commercial channels and serve up advertising. Now I know when I was in the UK, I would say 80% of my viewing would be on BBC, and perhaps 20% would be the commercial televisions. But I have to admit, I can't remember getting as many adverts as I get here in North America when I was in the UK. And frankly, I'm beginning to believe that the volume of advertising on commercial television here in North America is obscene and disgusting. And I don't really understand why the people are rising up in their millions to demand the government regulates the amount of television advertising we're getting. And I'd like to illustrate a few points here. I mean, for example, if you're looking for viewing figures, they're actually very difficult to find, and they're getting harder to find. I know a year ago I was concerned about the volume of advertising, and I decided I would do some research and got some interesting figures. Trying to do it again today, I find a lot of that information that I got a year ago I can't find now. So I think basically the television industry is hiding a heck of a lot. One figure I saw with the recent research was that television viewing is going up. But what they don't say is what television viewing is going up. I mean, today I think a lot more of us will watch programs like Netflix. A lot of us will download films from the internet, watch YouTube for that matter. In other words, we probably do watch more television because we're watching all these lovely programs that are advert free. What they don't give you is the viewing figures for commercial television, which I suspect are well down. I mean, you'll have heard the comment, because I've heard it umpteen times, we've got over 200 channels and we still can't find anything to watch. That's quite a regular comment that I hear all over the place. So, my problem is that I don't think that the industry is being very honest, and I think they're trying to take advantage of us, and I think they successfully, over the many years, have succeeded in dumbing us all down. Now, of course, if you ask about the media marketing people that produce all the advertising on television, they'll say, oh, of course we're not dumbing you down. There's absolutely no proof of that whatsoever. Well, you'd expect them to say that, because that's the way they make their money and make their living, is off advertising. But let's examine it. I say they're lying. Now that's a pretty brutal statement. But let's take National Geographic. Now I tell you, growing up, I had a lot of time for National Geographic. I think my parents actually bought the National Geographic magazine. They were subscribers. And we all enjoyed reading it. But when National Geographic went on television, and I came here to North America, I was absolutely appalled. In fact, I couldn't believe the amount of advertising that they were serving up. And so I actually timed it, because I thought, when are they getting back to the program? So I thought, I'm going to look at this closer. So when the next segment of advertising came down, I hit my stopwatch, and when they went back to the program, 6 minutes later, 6 minutes of advertising I had to suffer through to get to the next segment of the program. I think that's obscene and disgusting. Now I'll tell you this much, but dumbing this down, let me tell you what they do at the end of the 6 minutes. They actually replay 1 to 2 minutes of the previous segment. Because clearly they know they've dumbed us down that much that we can't retain the information about what we watched 6 minutes ago. So they have to spend another 1 or 2 minutes reminding us of what we watched in the previous segment. And then they'll get back to their programming. What I should have done was actually timed the actual real program and got my stopwatch on that and take it out of an hour's show. And I mean, I got to the point where I think maybe 20 minutes is actual real new programming out of that whole hour. All the rest is served up by repeating segments and by television advertising. I think it's absolutely disgusting. Are they meant to be an educational company? As a result, I don't watch National Geographic anymore. I mean, I remember one time I was wanting to watch this Eco Challenge, and I was really looking forward to watching that. But after a couple of shows, I just gave up. I was just so sick fed up of the massive amount of advertising I was getting that I thought there's no pleasure in watching that, and I just switched it off and went to something else. And of course, getting data is getting increasingly difficult. I mean, a year ago I did some research and got some very good information. Doing that same research today, I can't find most of the sources of information that I used before, because they've now taken it offline or they've hidden it. I mean, for example, I want to know, well, what are how important are the news channels in America? So when I did my research a year ago, I found that Fox News was by far the largest news program. And from the figures I saw, they got 2.8 million viewers. CNN, which I'd always thought was the news channel for America, was actually in fourth position with less than 1 million viewers. But if you take all these major news channels and add them up, there's maybe 6 million viewers in total, and that's out of a 350 million population in America. I mean, that's got to tell you something, surely. And then you look at the way the news channels play. I mean, often you'll watch the news, then they'll switch to advertising, and you get the full swatch of advertising. Then they'll go back to the news, and you'll get a 1-minute news summary, and they go straight back to give you another big wodge of advertising. I mean, I find that unacceptable. I don't mind saying with you, if I could find a good news channel that was commercial free and I had to pay a couple of $100 a year, I would cheerfully pay that to watch advert free television, news, and actually get decent news. As it happens, I probably watch more BBC News, because when I was in the UK, we got BBC News 24. No advertising at all, 24-hour news channel. Brilliant. And me being a news junkie, I loved that BBC News 24. Because they also had segments on the Middle East, on Africa, on Asia, and so forth. So you really got genuine world news. The other thing that I'm very concerned about is the state of the actual adverts that come on the screen. I mean, so many of these adverts, there's a whole ton of car adverts. Frankly, none of them would make me buy any of their cars. They don't give you any information of the car, they just want to see it being driven quite often illegally. In fact, I have to say, the first time I saw a Volkswagen advert, what popped into my mind was child killer. The guy was looking all over the place, wasn't looking at the road at all. If a wee kid had run out, he'd never seen him in a million years, he'd just run him down. So every time I saw a Volkswagen, in my mind came up, well, that's the child killer advert. But then, increasingly, we're getting adverts with tiny text on the screen that you cannot possibly read. It's impossible. Even if you had one of these big 100-inch televisions, you still couldn't read the tiny text they put on the screen. And I simply ask the question, why are they putting tiny text on the screen that you can't read? So if I see an advert with tiny text on the screen that I can't read, I treat them as crooks, criminals, con artists. And I will never, ever deal with any of those companies that put a lot of tiny text on the screen you can't read. In my mind, the tiny text is saying, "Hi, suckers! Everything we're telling you is a lie, but because we're telling you that it is a lot of lies in this tiny text you can't possibly read, you can't sue us. Ha 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 ha! There you go, suckers!" I mean, that's the way I treat these advertisers. They put tiny text on the screen you can't read. And just ask yourself, why are they doing it? If it was a real benefit, they'd want to tell you in big letters that you could read. But why are they putting tiny text on the screen they can't read? It's obviously a lot of conditions, and I don't know what it's saying because I can't read it. But anyway, as I say, if you see an advert on your television that's got tiny text you can't read, I highly recommend you never deal with that company, ever. Because they're not being upfront and honest, that's for sure. And some of these companies are big multinationals as well. I won't trust them. I won't trust them at all. And then let's look at the point of news itself. Now, I am a news junkie. And that's the major reason that I actually watch commercial television, because I want the news. And as I say, I'll watch CNN, I'll watch CTV in Canada, I'll watch the BBC, I'll watch other news shows. Because so often you can go to CNN and they've got themselves into a real fit over some minor story, and they want to make it big, and they talk on and on and on and on about that to the exclusion of any other news. Well, that's easy enough. I just switch to a different news channel in a different country, and I will get genuine news. I mean, they'll probably reference the story in America, but it'll only be a minute rather than several days. So it's easy to get good news by just switching the programs off. But I still don't understand why these news people come out with so much advertising. I mean, you can be watching a complete advertising segment with them, go back to the news, they give you a 1-minute news summary and go right back and give you another whole pile of advertising. I mean, it's just, to me, it's unacceptable, and I don't understand why the American people are putting up with it. I think the government should have laws that there's a maximum of 4 minutes advertising in every half hour. End of story. If you break it, you get a seriously big fine. But I think if you want to engage people in the world, let them know what's going on, the news channels, I mean, they just have to be better. And if anything, they're getting worse. They're taking trivia. I mean, yes, there can be some, I mean, the shootings that we've seen in America, absolutely appalling, absolutely appalling. And I need to know that's happening. But I don't want to watch that exclusively for the next several days with no other news at all. I mean, this is a huge world. I know the shooting's horrible and it affects the people in the area, but to say 350 million people in America, there's got to be a lot of other news stories around that they can also show. But no, they'll stick with that one news story. It's the big breaking news story, and they'll go on and on and on and on about it. Well, I mean, today it's easy enough because I can switch to the BBC, I can switch to CTV or any other news channel, and I'll get my news stories. So I don't need to be stuck watching all that. I mean, I can only say that to me it's rubbish. Tell the news stories, give us an update by all means, but by golly, don't make a... You can tell that I'm just irritated that they should actually spend so much time on a news story. I think it's unwarranted, and I think it goes to the point of being pretty disgusting, to be honest with you. Anyway, the point I'm wanting to make here is that we must surely get laws enacted by our government that restricts the amount of commercial advertising that we can see on our screen, and that the standards for advertising should be much better than they are. I mean, the people that have got the big bucks are the ones that are advertising constantly on the screen. What they're basically doing with their advert is saying, we don't care about you. You've just got to watch our advert hundreds and hundreds of times and buy from us. They don't, by flooding the television with their advert, what they're really saying is they don't care about you. And anyone that floods my television with advertising, I mistrust like anything. I mean, there are a lot of very good insurance companies out there who you rarely see advertising. But when you do see them advertising, it's always a fresh advert. For these companies with the big bucks, they put on a 1 or 2 minute advert and they just keep replaying that damn thing for years. Again, I'll never deal with those companies, ever. And I certainly recommend that you don't. We need to send a message to these people that this is unacceptable. Now, let me take one kind of final point. I'm basically saying that we've been dumbed down because no one seems to be discussing the state of television advertising and the sheer volume of it. I don't know anywhere that's being discussed, and it should be being discussed. Because at the end of the day, what are we doing? There's maybe a few programs that we might watch on television, just a few, but if you're going to satellite or cable, they sell you the packages. Most of the programs in those packages you're never going to watch. In fact, we may well watch only about five channels, possibly. But, you can't just buy those channels, you have to take the basic packages. And as I say, remember that I mentioned earlier that people keep saying we go over 200 channels, still can't find anything to watch. There's an absolute load of rubbish. In fact, there are many websites out there that actually get more visitor traffic than a lot of these television channels. You can argue Facebook itself, people are spending far more time on Facebook than they are actually watching television. So I think television needs to change, and I don't think it's adaptable. I mean, a breaking story that is seriously bad, rarely, very, very, very rarely will that break into their television advertising. I remember watching Larry King, and he had to break his interview to go to do adverts, and he was always panicking, trying to stop the guy talking so they could go to adverts. And I just think that's sick. Surely you can run over a couple of minutes if you need to. And I say the only other thing I would say is that I think the way that television news portrays politics is ridiculous. I think that's why a lot of people are no longer voting. We're just fed up. Any story that goes on, you get a Democrat or a Republican or a Conservative or a Liberal or whatever, and you know that whatever one says, the other's going to disagree with. I mean, we know it before this conversation even starts. And do we know who these anchors, so-called anchors, vote for themselves? I mean, they should be making a clear statement as to what their beliefs are on politics, but they never tell you that. They're the anchor, and the anchor becomes the star, and they shouldn't be the star. It should be the news that's the star. I mean, watching like Wolf Blitzer, whenever I see Wolf Blitzer on CNN, automatically in my mind I say, oh, that's coming up. And they do that all the time, coming up. For example, with the recent big conventions of the Republicans and the Democrats, I was quite keen to watch the Romney's and Obama's speeches. You went to CNN, because I normally default to that when I watch American news. You get Wolf Blitzer saying, oh, coming up, of course, will be Mitt Romney. Coming up, coming up, coming up. He said that from about 7 o'clock at night. But I said, yeah, but when is it coming up? In the end, I got fed up. I went to a different news channel, and they almost immediately said, yes, Romney will be on at 10 o'clock. I thought, great, now I know I can come back at 10 o'clock to watch the speech. But you see, CNN, these anchors, they're playing the little tricks. The thing is, they keep saying coming up. We'll keep watching them to get this story that's coming up. So coming up, Wolf Blitzer, frankly, is a con artist. Does that give him any extra credibility? Frankly, it doesn't in my book. If he's willing to play these silly little tricks, then I'm not interested. So anyway, as I say, I think the state of commercial television is terrible. There's no facts to actually tell me that because they're well hidden. I can't find them. But I would imagine viewing figures for commercial television are way down. In fact, I think in America, I was being told by one person there that more people get the news from the Jon Stewart show, which is meant to be a comedy channel. They get more news from his show than they get off the main news channels. In fact, more people view him than they view the actual news channels themselves. I think that just tells you that people are sick fed up of the way the news is being served up. Gotta change. Gotta change. So, my plea would be, is there any way that we could somehow get together as a general population and make it known to our governments that we are sick fed up of the way television is being served up to us, and that we would like some legislation and laws restricting the volume of advertising that we're being given. Because I think we need to be more intelligent and more internationally aware population. We need to know what's going on in the world. We get that through the news, and if the news is full of adverts and, quite frankly, pretty pathetic interviews with people that just counter each other and actually give you nothing, I think we need to get some better standards in there. So I don't know how we would do it, but maybe if you've watched this video and you think, yes, something does need to change, how do we change it? I don't actually know. The only thing I can do is to say I've used this YouTube video because at least I can voice my concerns and tell you about why I'm concerned about it. And maybe this will be a jumping off point to get something going. So, thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I haven't bored you to tears, but thanks for listening.